Hello, Fairview community. My name is Kristen Clegg, and I am an independent math consultant. I live in Streamwood, and I support school districts around the area with the understanding of mathematics and how we can engage students in the learning of mathematics at a deep level. I have had the opportunity to partner with Fairview for 3 years at the K-8 level, and prior to that, I worked with the middle school teachers. In this partnership, I've had an opportunity to take teachers through a series of professional development experiences where we've really delved deeply into the content standards of mathematics, but also how grade levels can support each other in the building of mathematics for students, along with how to address some of the gaps that have occurred through the pandemic. So this opportunity here today is a chance for me to explain what has happened this school year with the district learning team. We have brought together representatives from each grade level and some of the other roles in the teaching staff and formed a team that has delved into different math programs and has begun the evaluation process to choose a program that really best suits the future of mathematics for Fairview. So today I'm going to take you through that process, the toolkit we've used, and the different programs that we're taking a look at. So one of the things to keep in mind is that everything that we brought to the table for the teachers to begin to delve into was highly focused on targeting the standards and allowing the teachers to be equipped with materials that are really targeted at the depth of the standards at each grade level and really developing the mathematics in a way that is called for. Another part of the standards, though, is the mathematical practices. And this really defines for teachers what we should be creating in terms of student engagement, student discourse, student justification and presenting of ideas. These math practices should be a part of the daily experience in any future mathematics program that is selected. And it can be a difficult thing to develop in our learners. So we were really looking out for a program that would support this difficult work for teachers. Just a little bit of the timeline that we went through. Prior to the start of this process, the administrators and myself took a look at the programs that were out there to identify the high quality programs that would be brought to the table. I have taken numerous school districts around the area through this process. So I've had a chance to evaluate a variety of programs and even see initial professional development and implementation of these programs. So between the background that I had with the variety of these programs, along with the research that has been done through a tool called Ed Reports, we selected programs that we knew would be of the highest caliber for the teachers to begin to evaluate. So this process began in October with our district learning team. And the first thing that I took teachers through was a deep dive into the math practices. They had already received quite a bit of guidance in terms of content prior to that. So this was my chance to help them see really closely these practices and the ways in which we want to have our students engaged. This also gave me a chance to walk them through a toolkit that I will explain further. In December, teachers had an opportunity to watch publisher presentations of the 3 programs that we were evaluating. And that gave them a chance to gather more information and see an overview. And after the presentations, we dove into the use of the toolkit and some dialogue around these 3 programs. And we were able to, by January time, narrow the program options. So we currently have eliminated 2 of the programs to bring an even deeper dive into the process. So we are currently going into tool 3 in my toolkit in March, where we'll get a chance to see even more broadly these programs that we're considering and arrive at a selection, either at the end of that work there in March or into April. These are the programs that we are currently diving into. 2 of these programs span across kindergarten all the way through 8th grade. One of those is Eureka Math Squared, which is the latest version of Eureka Math. And the other K-8 program is Illustrative Mathematics. And then there is one other program that we're taking a look at the middle grades, and that is called Carnegie Learning. What's exciting about Eureka Math Squared is this is a program that has been around for many years, but in its latest version, it really incorporates everything that Great Minds, the organization, was receiving from both teachers and students in terms of some of the adaptations that were really being called for. This is a program, Eureka Math actually stems from a grant years ago in New York City that developed a program called Engage New York that was very targeted at the standards. And so the mathematics behind this program is deep and highly tested. But this latest version is everything that I would hope it would be. Having worked with the program in the Eureka Math form, this latest version really opens up engagement for students and supports teachers in that creating that engagement. The program is broken into 2 sections. The K-5 is titled A Story of Units, and each grade level has developed a set of modules, and the modules are highly focused on particular ranges of content standards. So it's a very clear-cut, very focused and coherent program. Teachers definitely know very clearly in the modules what they are targeting for student learning. At the middle grades, this is titled A Story of Ratios, where the mathematics of some of the fraction work in the intermediate grades grows up into working in a way where we think about comparisons and start preparing that thinking for the work to be done in high school. This is an example of a 3rd grade lesson on multiplication word problems. And one of the great things about the beginning stages of the lessons is that they have developed achievement descriptors that define for teachers really clearly what they're targeting within this lesson. And then in this tile, you can see there's an exit ticket that really would allow teachers to see evidence of the learning that has been achieved in that lesson. Every Eureka lesson begins with a fluency stage for 5 minutes where Teachers use a variety of activities and routines that build really deep numeracy for students and allow students to achieve automaticity of their facts rather than memorization. And that's a huge factor for the learning of mathematics, because what we've learned about fluency is that it needs to go deep. It needs to allow students to have a variety of strategies that they can pull from, and that they need to have a real good understanding of the relationship of these different strategies and facts, so that they build flexibility in their as they apply the facts to a variety of settings. So Eureka supports that on a daily basis. Then begins the launch part of the lesson. In this case, students are engaged in a card playing scenario just to kind of begin the visualization of multiplication. The learn stage is really the part of Eureka Squared that I am appreciating the most, because it's very supported with how we get students engaged in the math, and they are doing a variety of tasks, and it allows teachers to know the right kinds of questions and ways to support that deep learning. This particular one even has a nice wordless video on amusement park rides to help students visualize the context. And then they go into the use of Unifix cubes to explore that scenario. The last stage of the Eureka lessons is the land, where teachers facilitate a synthesis of the learning that has taken place and prepare to observe what students have gathered from the learning. A big part of Eureka is building visualization of the mathematics. So all throughout students' work with multiplication, they will see a variety of ways that they can display that visualization of the multiplication, so that they can stem into some of the other ways of thinking about multiplicative reasoning for later grades. So these are just some examples of the ways in which they would visualize that process. A big part of Eureka Math Squared is to make sure that not only are they doing great deep math learning, but that students have the tactile experience to go with that. So there's a huge incorporation of manipulatives in this latest version. And lastly, just to kind of share, there's a really nice digital component that goes with Eureka Math Squared now, that allows teachers to gather assessment information and really know where students stand in particular math concepts and how to proceed. So if they are showing that they have gaps in their learning, it supports teachers for filling those gaps. And then if students are showing that they are really well mastered in a particular concept and ready for some enrichment, it will support that learning or that process too. Illustrative mathematics is a problem-based learning program that puts these really great real-world scenarios at the forefront of the learning. Illustrative actually comes from an organization that involves some of the authors of the standards, and it stems from a website that was developed years ago to illustrate all of the standards across the grades in terms of a task that is rigorous and engaging for students. So what they have done is taken this great collection of tasks and developed more fully a program that puts these real world scenarios that are very engaging at the forefront of learning, and then asks students to explore these tasks work with others, and then supports teachers in helping them bring that learning together. At the K-1 level, there are centers built into that. So every lesson is going to begin with a warm-up and then move into activities that have a synthesis of their own. And then the centers become a part of that learning. In grades 2 through 5, the centers actually are a separation from the daily lesson, but are a part of supporting the learning in an everyday basis. And then in grades 6 through 8, because the timeline is built for a 45 to 50-minute session, you don't see necessarily these separated centers, but they are still engaged in activities that are hands-on and engaging and require that they justify their thinking and collaborate with others. This is an example of a 3rd grade lesson called Drawing Situations and Diagrams, Oh My. And each of the lessons, as I mentioned, has a warm-up with activities, a lesson synthesis, and a cool down. And so this particular one has a really nice notice and wonder as a part of the warm-up. And this is a routine that's built in throughout the program that has students really just studying visually the understandings of mathematics. And then this lesson also has a really nice card sort that asks students to explain how they're pairing cards together and what they're seeing in these different scenarios. Again, this program, like all of the programs that we're looking at, uses visualization as a consistent piece of the program to build deeper learning of mathematics. So these are just some of the visuals that this program would be using for the concept of multiplication. You'll notice that there is a snapshot of the square tiles too. So there's a nice tie between what they would be doing in a tactile form with what they would be seeing on paper and sketching for themselves. And then there in the lower right-hand corner is an example of a tape diagram that will build all across the grades and even support algebraic thinking at the middle grades. These are some of the instructional routines that are a part of illustrative, and teachers are supported in how to instruct in this way, but also how to get the most from their students in terms of conversation and thinking and collaborating. And so what you'll notice there are things like, how many do you see, which one belongs, and acting out, and then that notice and wonder again. The centers that come with illustrative math are intended to, at the elementary grades, allow them to practice skills and allow teachers to do some differentiated instruction, but they also have a firm purpose in building fluency. So just like we saw with Eureka having a daily emphasis on building fluency, this program would have that too. And these centers are intended to have different stages in which they can be engaged in across the grades, and depending on what students show that they need from those center activities. And lastly, illustrative math's technology component is through a program called kittum, which would allow teachers to gather information about their students and their learning, and allow for some individual guided instruction in a digital form. Last program that I would like to share is Carnegie Learning. And this is the one that is just for the middle school. On the student end, this incorporates a math workbook, a program called Mathia software, and then a skills practice to support some of the additional needs. It uses a philosophy of instruction on the teacher end that goes through daily sessions that are intended to first engage students in the thinking and the learning, then work on development of those mathematical concepts over days of experiences, and then ends the collection of sessions with a demonstration opportunity for students to show what they have learned. So this is an example of a sixth grade. They actually refer to the whole collection of sessions as one lesson. So this is days of experiences that first begin with a getting started and then build into different activities. You'll notice that this one goes up through 5 activities that span a series of days, and then ends with a demonstration lesson that allows students to show their learning. This particular one, the first part of this, the getting started, puts students in a scenario of predicting a game score. And all throughout Carnegie Learning, you're going to see a series of contexts, real world contexts, that ask students to connect every day's lessons within that context and ask them to do some very critical thinking. Along the margins, there's always going to be support for teachers in how to engage students in that thinking and how to support the discourse. This is an example of one of the activities within that series of lessons or sessions, they refer to them as. And this one is working on the visualization of ratio and proportion through thinking about working with mixing different colors of paint. So again, like the other programs, there's an emphasis on the visualization of the mathematics. This one's at a little bit more sophisticated level because it's at only the middle grades. And then the technology end of Carnegie is through a program called Mathia. This one is really going to allow for a variety of differentiation supports, because it not only is gathering great information for teachers in terms of assessment and knowing what their students need, but it also supports that learning almost as like a little built-in teacher tutorial that is dependent on how students are responding within activities. So it's kind of like students have their own little personal tutor. So to analyze these different programs, what we have used is a toolkit that actually comes from the National Council of Supervisors of Mathematics. It's something that I've used with numerous districts in the area and have used over the years and kind of tweaked and refined. And the intention is to have the teachers within the district learning team go very deep within the mathematics that is laid out in the programs that we are considering. The first tool is one that really just looks at the content first and has teachers analyze according to their standards, how deeply does the mathematics lay out in the program, and is it really doing a nice balance of having students work with both conceptual learning and procedural learning. The second tool is the math practices. And as I mentioned before, these practices are what we want students engaged in every single day. We don't want to really return to kind of the stand and deliver model where teacher just tells students what to do and they try to replicate. We instead want students engaged and making sense of the math and working with it and justifying it and showing their thinking. And so that's an important part of the process to make sure that the materials would allow that to happen. The third tool that we will be diving into as a team in March is overarching considerations. And the three areas we'll be looking at are equity, assessment, and technology. And when it comes to equity, it's really a variety of things having to do with allowing teachers to differentiate what they're providing students according to what they're showing they need. So in March, we will go kind of more broadly. At this point, we have gone very deep with the math and the learning of the math. And so in this third tool, we'll go very broad at all of the components that would be offered within the program. And so as we do that here in March, what I have experienced in the past is we start to see which program is really going to be the best fit. And we can see that through the evidence that we've gathered in the toolkit and through some final stages of kind of doing some pros and cons of how well the program will fit the future of Fairview mathematics and how well that program will really allow teachers to develop students that go even deeper with their mathematical learning and feel very empowered by that mathematical learning. So I look forward to sharing the final stages of this process with you. And I know that Fairview is going to be reaching out to you to see what questions you might have and any information that you might need further. So thank you for your time. And I'm very excited for how mathematics can look in the future and the great potential of these programs being considered.